Hello, my name is Crystal Cito, and today I want to describe for you the awful conditions of Flint, Michigan not having a great water supply. According to the article, How Much Water Do You Need to Survive?, it states that you must drink 8 glasses of water a day to be hydrated. While in Flint, Michigan, civilians don't have safe water to drink or bathe in. I should be listened to because I have done a lot of research, and as a society, we need to help these victims. This is relevant to us because we are so privileged and we don't do anything to help others with our advantages. The water crisis began in April of 2014 when the city mayor of Flint, Michigan changed the water system from Detroit to Flint, the Flint River to save money. Soon after the water supply was changed, there was a high percentage of lead in the tap water, which made the water look dirty, and lots of residents complained. The residents soon after told the mayor, and he responded back saying that contaminated water was only going to be temporary for a few days because it was due to the switch between the water supplies. So on the left over there, that's the Flint water that first came out, and that was the water before. And yeah, there's a bunch of lead and other dangerous metals in the water. This contamination could have been avoided if the water put orthophosphate into the water. Orthophosphate is a chemical that prevents toxic from getting into the water. It's interesting because the federal law requires orthophosphate to be put into the water, but no one seems to know why they didn't put it in their water. Since they did not put orthophosphate into the water, the state allowed the water supply to flow through lead pipes that were gathering lead and other dangerous metals into their water, which eventually led into their residents' tap water. Children and adults were expected to survive off of toxic water for nearly 4 years, and they were not allowed to leave their house. We need water in our everyday lives. Every day we use our tap water to shower, brush our teeth, etc. But the residents of Flint couldn't do that. In the article for New York Times, it says, families are going to extraordinary lengths to find places where they can bathe without fear, taking measures that many say add the upheaval that has been a part of their lives since state officials confirmed that last fall that their water was contaminated with dangerous levels of lead. Imagine having to go searching for a new place to take a shower, or not knowing where your next shower is going to be, or even worse, not being able to shower in the comfort of your own home without being exposed to toxic metals. The residents not being able to shower in their own home and not having enough resources for getting a quart of water is devastating. Some residents even bought a gym pass just to take a shower. If the residents didn't have anywhere to go to shower, the New York Times states that they would have to wait in a long line to take a shower with a portable shower called pumpkin spray. So this was a spray that was given to them by a charity in Washington. They were giving, I think, 200 of these for the whole city, so they had a wait line. And in order to brush your teeth, they would have to use a gallon of water and to wash their face, etc. And that was the water that was coming out of their bathtub. Officials told people to boil their contaminated water and use that to take a shower. But if you boil the water, it only worsens the lead. Even having to find places to take a shower, Flint residents were not allowed to leave. The residents of Flint had no other choice but to stay in their homes, even after having toxic water. Some asked, why didn't the residents just leave instead of staying? In the article, Home Buyers Beware, it says, suits involving home buyers suing sellers for not disclosing problems with lead in a house's water. People were getting sued for not only telling home buyers about lead in pipes. It is legally required to tell a home buyer about the lead in pipes. And the people of Flint couldn't find anyone to buy the house with pipe problem, leaving them no choice but to stay. Families were trapped to stay in their homes with toxic water. The government made it a national emergency, but still didn't allow the families to evacuate. Some even left their homes and filed for bankruptcy. Some residents rather go bankrupt than to live with contaminated water. CNN says some folks are willing to abandon their homes and go into bankruptcy just to get out to get safe water. People were so People were so desperate to get a hold of clean water that they filed for bankruptcy and left everything behind. Children and adults had no other option but to stay in their homes. So this is like the homes, and this is how many waters they would use a week. So they would families were forced to stay in their homes even after developing bad medical conditions. Most of the Flint residents were injured because of the contaminated water. Families were trapped in their homes with toxic water, which led to them having bad medical conditions. Many families experienced different injuries. The most common were rashes, Legionnaires' disease, and hair loss. In the CNN article, it summarizes that Tim Monahan thought he was suffering from a heat stroke because he was shivering, coughing up black phlegm, and had a fever of 104 degrees. When he went to the doctors, it turned out to be Legionnaires' disease. And the rate went up from, I believe this is from 2009, and 2015, 2014 was when it first happened. Many families experienced it. According to the Detroit News, it states that out of the 90 Legionnaires' disease cases, more than most of them were because of the city's water supply. Even after many kids and adults were suffering, they had no other resources to go to. All the help they got was from charities and volunteers. Rashes and hair loss were the most common effect the residents experienced when they used tap water. According to the medical study, they were told that there was no exact link to what may have caused the rashes or hair loss, but most of the residents that used the tap water ended up with rashes. So these two are two people that had rashes and lived in Flint. Rashes and hair loss is not a big deal, but Melissa Mays told CNN that her sons that are anemic were experiencing bone pain and breakage. She wanted to leave the city, but she couldn't sell her property. She says she is more angry that the state officials knew they were followed, and they didn't do anything to address it. Despite all the conditions they were living in, they were still not allowed to sell or leave their house. If they were allowed to leave their house, or even were told that the water was not safe, it would have prevented all this from happening. Some residents even moved out of their homes after the state allegedly said that their water was fine, but they were scared that they were being lied to again. Some of the residents have PTSD and said they can't even look at their water the same or even trust water if it's not bottled. It is awful that the residents of Flint had to go through this, and even as of now, only some parts of Flint have clean water, at least safe water where they can filter it. Flint changed their water back to Detroit's. Some water is still not safe. It's been almost 5 years since this happened, and they still haven't changed the real problem, which is their water pipes. This began in April of 2014 and is currently still happening in March of 2019. And some residents of Flint still do not have safe water, but the city said they are going to replace all the pipes by the end of 2019.
Manuel, what do you think?
When she first went up there was really no attention grabber. She kind of just went right into it. She introduced herself, and that's not really grabbing our attention doing that. So she could have done something better to jump out at us with it. The transitions weren't very clear, but we did, get that she was going on to different topics. She could probably make her transitions a little bit smoother. She had a good amount of visuals, and she could have, on some of them, used them to her benefit more to explain the situation that she was talking about. She read from the cards instead of memorizing a speech, but her citation's really good, and she did a really good job producing sympathy for the people of Flint, Michigan, and she had a good conclusion as far as telling us the problem's still ongoing and the hope to resolve the problem in the future.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to echo a couple of the things that you pointed out that were a little bit problematic. There's really just your name in the purpose statement. That's not much of an attention device. We know what your subject is, which is okay. I can hear you clocking off things that you saw on the outline template in the opening part of the speech, but the one thing that I didn't hear you clocking off was a very clear statement of what the purpose was. So I think that's a problem, and there's not really a preview that indicates what the structure is going to be in the presentation. That to me was the weakest part of the speech, the structural material. It's back and forth. I do think that there's a possible structure here, but it needs to be a lot clearer, and that's, you know, it starts to sound like you're wandering around on the subject, and several times I heard you repeating the same kinds of phrases, and every time those phrases came up again, I thought, well, it sounds like we're back on a subject that you talked about already. I do think that you did a nice job citing a variety of material, especially in the second half of the speech, so there is supporting material in the presentation. It gets a little confusing. I know that residents there have difficulty getting out of the area. Let's face it, that's where your home is, that's where your life is, and that sort of thing, but you make it sound like there's a government-imposed barrier that prevents people from moving out, and that's not clear at all, and you suggested it a number of times, but then you also tell us about people who did leave, who've abandoned. I'm going, well, which way is it? And I think it's mostly the economic situation that creates the limitation on people getting out of that. I think you know, there's a pretty straightforward way to do this. Tell us what the problem is, here's what's going on, tell us what has been done about it so far and explain why that's insufficient, and then tell us what's supposed to be happening, and that would give us a much more straightforward way of looking at the subject. As it was, it just felt like we were bouncing around on the topic. I like the visuals for the most part. There was one that was a little crowded and had too many things on it, but otherwise I thought that you did a pretty good job showing us some of the problems that residents face there, and explaining the origin of the problem. It was not quite clear to me why the chemical that you mentioned at the one point would have stopped the lead that was going on, or did the water release the lead, but if it had been treated with the chemical it wouldn't release the lead? That was not clear. And if the problem is the lead pipes, how was the chemical solved that? There's no explanation of that. So it sounds like it's a very complicated issue for the residents there. Of course, everybody's got a financial stake in what's happening in that situation, in those circumstances, and I can understand why they might feel that they're trapped there, but to suggest that they're being locked in their homes and they can't get out, that sounds a little odd, an odd way to present that concept. You're rushing during the presentation, and there's way too much reading, so you need to get to the point there. All right, we're going to have to stop here because I do need to leave at this point. We've got two people that were here and ready to go that we didn't get a chance to hear from. Both of you will be on standby on Wednesday. We'll go with the scheduled folks first, and then we'll plug you in when we can. Thank you all very much. I will see you on Wednesday.
Do you want us to turn these in today?
No,
Hold on.
you don't turn them in at all. You type up your comments on YouTube. Thank you.
Here's the.
Thank you. The roll sheet, did everybody sign the roll sheet? Good deal.
Sure.